Hello everyone, Sakey here, Wake Up New Zealand. Well, there's so many serious problems in New Zealand at the moment that are not being spoken about, not being addressed by the government, and all we hear is about hate crime, extremists, activists, racist, neo-Nazi. I am just so over it. And it's about time we start bringing the real domestic issues to hand. And one of those I need to talk to you about today is transgender teaching in New Zealand schools. So, I personally, like many other of my friends and other advocates throughout New Zealand, stand up for freedom of speech. The threats by Jacinda Ardern's government using weapons of courts and imprisonment, character assassination against innocent people by calling them white supremacists and racists, just masks very serious issues that are not being aired in public. Snuffing out live on requests. Huge problems, huge serious problems on the domestic front. And they're getting worse. Now we hear about bills that are going through Parliament, one being, as I mentioned, snuffing out live on request. Just investigate the UN website. See what you find. You will see all about how they have been planning that for years and legalised abortion. We have nothing but UN puppets in the sex pits of Wellington. So, freedom of speech and family, sexual ethics. A man in the UK by the name of David Mackerath, a doctor, is taking the Department of Work and Pensions to court. David refused to be forced to use transgender language, pronouns, because of freedom of conscience. Freedom of conscience among medical professionals and other public sector workers. Not an attack on those with gender problems, I'm not talking about that. And we know there are people with gender problems, there's no denying that. But he refused to call a 6-footed, bearded man a she. He said he couldn't tell a lie, he couldn't speak untruths, he had to speak his conscience, and he has been persecuted for that. A society steeped in cowardice. Telling the truth about sex now has become a conscience issue. It's bloody ludicrous, don't you think? So, unwanted conduct. That Department of Work and Pensions are refusing to use preferred transgender pronouns amounted to unwanted conduct. That's what they're saying. This is unwanted conduct because this doctor would not call a man with a beard a she. They say it's harassment under the Equalities Act 2010. Like all governments and their departments, our politicians love to cherry pick to twist. The meaning of harassment is beyond credibility, and don't we see that happening here? And yes, it can happen in New Zealand. There's a very dangerous, it's very seriously dangerous, and the government's understanding of the concept of rights and dignity now rests on the duty to lie. Yes, you have a duty to lie unless you want to be persecuted. So, there's little respect for human dignity. It's at stake. So refusing to lie about sex gets this man before the courts and it could happen in New Zealand, without a doubt. This is an enforcement of injustice to language and common sense, a denial of the truth. With conscience, we have a right to say what we believe and what we think. To use interrogation on someone about their beliefs of gender is bloody appalling. Entire societies are going to be affected by transgender teaching in schools. People must be free to identify and object what they agree and disagree with. That's what makes us all individually unique. So, transgender ideology being taught in schools is bloody nonsense. It's dangerous to mental, physical, medical health. Children will become confused as they grow up, frustrated and angry. Hence, mental health problems. The risk of suicidal thoughts, as if suicide isn't high enough in this country already. Let's add a bit more, eh, government? You're not dealing with that one now. Children must not be used by UN political puppets, particularly not those who live in the cesspits of Wellington. These are politicians who've hardly had their asses wiped, who are still in bloody nappies. They're purely pen pushers and UN puppets, not working for us, working for the UN. Politicians have no right to endorse transgender teaching in schools, to direct a child's sexuality because of their political, ridiculous, reckless, careless ideologies. Truth and conscience. Conscience is vital. A person acting without conscience has very dangerous characteristics. No shame, can do what they like with no accepting, no blame. There is no empathy, no fear. And they don't care how others are detrimentally affected. They don't care about how you walk in your shoes as long as they are okay. They are cold and heartless. So transgender teaching within our education system, you can't be polite about addressing this. This is about fantasizing rather than reality about sex, sexual role-playing in fairyland. They think they have magic wands to change things about a kid's sex, and now they're calling it gender. So, tell the truth, live with fear. Fear of being punished. This is what's happening in New Zealand. If you tell the truth, you're persecuted. Liars are rewarded. But we don't need any rewards. We can continue to tell the truth. So wake up, New Zealand, tell the truth, face the fear, and do it anyway. It's quite likely you'll be labelled with the hate crime, but, you know, that's how it goes. They're throwing everything into the hate crime melting pot. Be critical of transgender. Maybe that's the next serious issue that will be called hate crime in New Zealand. I'm not ignoring that some people have gender issues. What I am saying that the education system is not the place to teach transgender. It is adding to problems. It's promoting a magnitude of mental health problems and a further effort to break down the family unit, to destroy it. giving mixed messages, thinking of those girls and boys who have been sexually abused. Where does that lead them? Mixed messages about transgender and how that will reflect on them. Their sad experience doesn't count anymore because sharing your thoughts about it will label you transphobic, an extremist, a white supremacist. You will not be acknowledged anymore. And that's how it is. Transgender is protected, but the characteristics of sex is not. How does that stand with equality? New ideologies promoted by Ardern, the green ideology, the Muslim ideology, the anti-Islamophobic ideology, anti-xenophobia ideology, the communist, the Marxist, the socialist ideology, stuff out life on request ideology, 1080 toxic poisoning ideology, 5G ideology, and transgender ideology. Ardern and her cronies in the cesspit of Wellington, their ideology, their political ideology. There is no well-being ideology in this country. This government does not promote it. And no government has a right to interfere or intervene with anyone's thought patterns the way that they personally feel, to interfere with a child's sexuality, making it an educational transgender issue. These politicians need to crawl under a rock and never surface again. Sex is not a gender. For educational purpose, this could be called gender purposely, because perhaps we could demand that our kids don't attend as a class on sexual education. So if we call it gender, transgender, parents are forcibly having to let their children go into these classes and be involved. I don't know, but that's just a thought. And talk about extremism. A government doesn't have a moral right at any level of government to demand that individuals unite through a one-line thinking and of expression. So obviously, now, saying it quite plainly, male and female, those words are outdated. Sex is not gender, and it's not the truth. The truth becomes persecuted, and once again the liars are rewarded. Definition of sex, either of the two main categories, male, female, into which humans and most living things are divided on the basis of reproductive functions. Definition of gender, the term denotes a range of identities that do not correspond to established ideals of male and female. So, definition of transgender. Now, this is funny. Denoting to a sense of personal identity and gender that does not correspond with their sex. So, fantasy, isn't it? Living fantasy? Living lies? So where do we draw the line? Women, girls are not given a clear message. Their infinite bodies are worthy of dignity and integrity, respect. So transgender education in schools and activism of transgender, if this becomes familiarised and normalised, we have a huge problem. This may cause children to hate themselves, for their minds to be confused and frustrated, to have serious mental health problems, suicidal tendencies. Wake up, New Zealand. It's up to us adults, parents, extended family, to actually demand that transgender teaching at school is stopped, and stopped right now. It's up to us to protect our children. The government is using and mentally abusing them, and they don't bloody care. They promote it, so we need to do something about it. So I suggest you actually write, email, talk to the schools, protest. I don't care what you do, but bloody do something for your child's sake. Thank you, people.